In regards to the Siege of Susa, here we are in Conquerors Alexander the Great. Darius came out to fight against Alexander's army because he was besieged and it's almost over. And we're getting to the annoying level, I think, in terms of stacks there. Just little pieces underneath bigger pieces. Actually, I'm going to just put this over here, over on the off-map section, so that this is a little less obnoxious. Okay. And the battle was an interesting one. Darius attacked with surprise card. Alexander played terrain advantage. Not quite equaled out. And then for the casualties, he played determined troops, which was an iffy thing. He'd already won the battle, but he started having worries because he's out of command, and Darius is not. So the effect could have been painful on him, even though he has a smaller army. He just wanted to try to make sure that something horrible didn't happen out of this. So reducing the total risk by playing the determined troops. It ended up being, I think, 12 losses for the Persians and 2 for the Macedonians, but it could have gone much, much worse from the chart, because there's no guarantee that the Persians would have taken any significant losses. 1 or 2 is reasonable. They're on that 36 to 44 chart, or were. And actually, they should have been on the 45 to 54. I think I made a mistake. Oh well. And Alexander's on this chart, and it was possible that he could end up taking double the losses, which would make his army useless. That's something I'd rather not have happen. Morale, the elite level of both armies is either max or minimum at this point, so that's not going to change from this battle. All right. So with all the Persian units battle fatigued, the decision was made on their first. They got 2 actions in a row, which is kind of odd. On their first action, they chose to take instead an administrative action, which affects both players, and not a lot of treasuries were restored because they don't own territories anymore, really. They were able to upgrade, I think this one. But they got their troops off battle fatigue. And for the Macedonians, the only real upgrade over at home, that's no longer depleted. But everything's so far out of supply with the Macedonians at this point that there's not a lot they can do about it. And the Persians came out again for another battle. They lost again. It's not easy to win against Alexander, so that's no big deal, but they did inflict more losses, and enough to give Alexander battle fatigue. That ended up being, I think they took 2 and the Macedonians took 7. That's not a trade that can be made very often. This time they were the ones to play the determined troops, but that city is going to just fall very soon. There's no question. It's at a 2-point. It survived 2 rolls already that had a pretty good chance, 50-50 chance of eliminating it. And there's not a lot left in Persia. There's this army that I raised up here with now like 9 strength points. But without the treasure cities, it's going to be tough to raise a decent army. So the Siege of Susa is over. Macedonian weariness has gone up a point. And I think the game takes a whole different state now. First of all, Darius III has been executed, along with one of his generals. There's only one general left on the board who will probably become the great king, even though he's not Persian. It seems to be allowable. Their other leaders are not yet on the map, so seems unlikely. it's possible I may do a reinforcement turn. The Royal Treasury and the Royal Family are both under Alexander's control. I'm not sure if he wants to marry into the Royal Family yet. Don't really see any reason to delay, but there may be cards that make that a negative factor. I saw there was the mass wedding one, but that causes the royal marriage, so I don't think that's very helpful. But the way is pretty much open right now. We've got this one leader, and he's faced by a superior Macedonian force besieging the treasure city there. They've got one treasure city left in the back, and then they've got Babylon as well. What is this? Persepolis? Yeah. So there's really not a lot left to do back here. I think I want to send Alexander towards Egypt. He's not yet great king, but he will be soon enough, and I want to get this over as quickly as possible because that's kind of the goal from the Alexandrian point of view. I think that's about it. Well, lo and behold, we have the new great king, and he's actually Persian. I did a reinforcement phase, emptied out Persepolis' treasury, got some 15 troops there. You know, it's just not enough to do much, but... And this is kind of the problem. With this strategy, as soon as Persia's gone, over on this side, down in this area, it's over. It's just a matter of mopping up down to Egypt. Now, historically, I believe Alexander went down to Egypt first, and then turned against the rest of Persia. I know that the siege of Tyre was earlier than the conquest of the Persian territories. So I think this is actually for this game at least, a more viable strategy. The only problem with this strategy that I see is I'm letting the Persians keep their navy, which could mean that they could interfere in the control of European provinces. That could be a serious problem, actually. We'll see. So we've had a little bit of movement since the fall of Susa. This Ecbatana fell. I don't know if I caught that. We've got a siege by the Macedonians of Damascus that's been started. And then the Persians got a couple of turns in a row, and they withdrew the force they had up here, dropping some garrisons off to slow things down. It took 2 moves to do this, pulling back to Persepolis, gathering their armies. Next time they get a phase, they're going to combine them. And I think they're actually going to try to go after Alexander. We see the Macedonian navy beginning to coalesce. That's to speed up sieges along the coast. But we do see something really interesting, which is a counter-revolution over in Lydia, and that has to be cleared up because Lydia is necessary to become great king. So Alexander is going to have to do something. He's got 3 armies in the field, all down in Persia or the Near East, and he doesn't have a force to send after that right now. It's not really a huge deal at this point because he's not close to winning, but at some point he is going to have to send an army there. So he's going to have to combine 2 of his armies, or send one for a long walk. Quick follow-up of where we are. The Macedonians got a turn. They were pretty much assured that because of the patterning. The Persians had already gone twice. They used that to great effect. They moved Antipater through those garrisons, just overrunning them, no big deal there at all, and are now sitting outside Persepolis. They also played an assassin and killed the current Great King. So on the next Persian turn, there'll be a new one. And then finally, ooh, we might make the admiral. I don't know if that's allowed. I don't think that's a good idea, actually. I think he'll have to command armies if that's the case, and he has a 0 for that, essentially. Okay. We also saw success at the Siege of Damascus, which means starting to press forward deeper into either Phoenicia or Judea at this point. Might make sense. Okay, Antipater moves forward and attacks at Persepolis, and he defeats whoever the new Great King is. Probably shouldn't have even been out there waiting to fight, but it was actually kind of a Pyrrhic victory again, though. The Macedonians took 5 losses to the Persian 2. And I believe that makes both sides battle fatigued. I forgot to mark that. Put those there. But yeah, that's so this is nearly the end. There's only one more city left with which they could raise troops. So, and it has no treasury. This one had no treasury. Macedonians are able to get supply actually out of this isn't anymore, Susa. That's the only place where there is supply right now, so that's kind of in the area. Yep, that's about it, I guess. So we're getting pretty close to the end. Persepolis just fell. Alexander laid siege once again to Babylon. One thing I'm looking at is Alexander's very low injury points. He's only got 4, and he's got to go over 20 for this to make a difference. How is that happening? Well, one of the reasons is I'm not engaging in battles with Alexander. He's fought a couple of battles and picked up those injuries, or some of them there. But for the most part, we saw Antipater conduct a lot of battles. That may be a problem. I think there's the issue. The Persians have to fight Alexander to end this game in their favor. Otherwise, it doesn't look like, from my understanding of the rules, that sieges cause Alexander to have wounds. So, and if they did, you'd want to not have him do sieges instead, because that would really generate a lot of wounds. Because it takes like 3 rolls on the table to get anywhere. So anyway, given that, it seems like there's a very simple strategy for the Macedonian player to avoid losing, which is don't use Alexander much. That's the only real implication on the game. It's possible he could run out of troops this way. Mutinies, I haven't faced one yet, and I'm getting damn close to them. But mutinies reset the track down by 5 each time they happen. So you're still going to see them happening as things keep pushing forward. But the thing is, there's still a lot of troops left that I haven't tapped, and there is nothing in the way. I mean, there is no chance now for the Persians to build any troops, as far as I can see. They've got, unless there's a card that allows it. So, for example, they were able to get a garrison here. If they can force a revolt or something and somehow get one of these back provinces, and that's quite possible, actually. So, if they can force a revolt, they can start over again and start this up again. So, I guess there's still something here. To me, one thing I'm noticing is this game feels like a big solitaire game. Almost from the very beginning. It almost feels like the decisions you make with the Persians are so unimportant. They can't do much. I'm not sure if that's really the case. I don't know if the decisions that either side make are all that important.